Today, I am sharing the top tips of how financial discipline helped us in paying off $48,000, that's US dollars, in debt in under 2 years. So, what did that look like? I've already shared a few videos about what we've done, and I have a few more coming after this about ways that we've saved money, as well as a final video about what we did to bring in extra money. So, make sure you're subscribed so that you can see those videos when they come out. Now, today I'm talking all about the financial parts. The first thing we did, we had to know what our spending was, what our saving was. I had already kept track my whole adult life about what I was spending, but it was more reactive. I just like to keep track of it. It was never driving the spending. So it would kind of just, if I spent money on coffee, I just write it in there later, sort of thing. And so this was a shift in our thinking. We had to actually say, okay, we make X amount. We have this much in debt. How much can we possibly put towards that debt each month after our bills are paid? And where in our bills can we cut down on things? And so even an extra $50 towards a debt felt monumental because we just all helped. I had to just look at that every single penny, every dollar, every $5 mattered. There was no dismissing things as less important than other things because it all was going towards this big goal of freedom. So a spreadsheet, that was the number one thing. Number two is we would pay the minimums and then we would just put everything extra on one debt. And however you want to approach this, there's different theories, doesn't matter. The point is just start doing it. Whether it's the highest interest one or it's the smallest one. There are people out there that say go after the smallest one because it's more of a behavioral thing and you start to get a big win. And that's what we did. I can see the value in that. Where if you have something that's just a few $100s or a couple thousand versus one that's $15,000, to get that small one knocked out does feel really good. And it gives you that win that sometimes you really do need. But if you also have all interest rates that are, 5%, 6%, 10%, and then you have a 30%, you might want to go for the 30% because you're throwing more money away. So you have to make the judgment call. Either way, pour every extra cent you can towards that big debt. We started a savings fund. So our first goal, and this was back in around 2011, 2012, 2013, is we had to sell stuff in order to even be able to get $1,000 together. So we had to just put the brakes on all extra spending. We sold a bunch of stuff. We got that $1,000. And this is the first time in my adult life that I'd had a savings account. And we put that money in savings. That felt empowering. It felt like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So we have all our debt over here, but there's something grounding us in the savings world. We're being responsible. So that was really powerful. The next item was, I call it the strategic no. So this is where we basically had to say no to almost everything for a while. My sisters and I would love to go meet up at the mall and walk around, or my daughter, and I had to stop doing all of that. We had families who, one side of our family, every Sunday they'd all go out to eat. We knew that was an instant $50 to $100. We had to say, no, we can't do that anymore. And we would offer some other things. Sometimes we'd have people over and we'd have dinner on the patio. Other times we'd try to meet up and go for a walk. Some of those relationships, we just didn't get together as much. Or I would try to switch it to having coffee and meeting a friend for coffee. And once you do that, you can decide. You can do a really cheap tea, a basic cup of coffee, and bring some sweeteners and some things you want to add to your coffee. Like there's ways you can still do that on a budget. So that was a big thing. We had to say no and feel like we had to find a place within ourselves where our value and our cool factor was not determined by outside people. We knew that they were judging us and they were like, what's going on with them? We didn't care. We had to be so focused on our goal because we knew the rock in their stomachs, like that pit feeling of like, that we had, the fear, the stress. They didn't know all that. We knew that. And so we had to trust that we knew ourselves better than they knew us and what we were going through. And the truth is, we've all been in that place where we're not caring. We're just like letting life happen and we figure it'll work itself out later. Someday I'll get a raise, someday I'll get extra money. And so we don't worry about it as much. But when we stopped waiting for that someday and we said, no, today's the day we're taking control. If someday we get a raise or if someday we have more, then great. Then we'll have more money. But if we don't rein this in right now, these habits, whether we make 100,000 or 200 or a million, if we're used to spending more than we make, we're going to keep that up. And so it was more of a behavioral shift and owning our power that we got from saying no to things. And it was not easy, but I'm so glad that we learned how to do that. It's been life-changing. The next thing, and it kind of goes hand in hand with that, is we stopped trying to keep up with the Joneses. We never were much like this, but I think every person has some level of this, whether it's our daughter having the newest softball equipment and the newest bat because the other kids on her team have that bat, or she's going to get the most expensive, nice warm-ups because that's what everyone else is doing for her sports teams. We had to get really, really serious about what things were actually needed. When there was all bonus stuff, maybe we'd say, okay, you can get the sweatshirt, but we're not getting the whole outfit. And where else in life can we start making changes like that? Can we drive a different car? Can we make this lawnmower work a few more years before we get a new one? Every area, when you start looking at that and you stop buying, you have to face that moment where you're not keeping up with others anymore. And something really empowering happens when you do that because you shift your energy back inward instead of the seeking energy, which is exhausting and it actually turns people off anyways. And so it's much more fun to just be aligned with yourself and going for a dream and being in tune and all energy towards that than it is getting the way to goes and the approvals from other people. Next, we had budget meetings. This was much more my thing than it was my husband's. So I had to learn to keep them pretty quick, come prepared, because to him, he just wanted to know, like, okay, basically you're telling me all my paycheck is gone before I make it. It felt like forever for him that it was like, yes, basically that's what I'm telling you. I would tell him, like, I handled all the bills. And so I would be like, no, but we paid this off and we did this and this is going really good. And he'd be like, okay. And so I had to keep him just enough in the loop but not bury him because he's already doing all the working and doing the extra overtime and doing all that. But I felt like it was really important for us to still be talking and be in it together because that was what stopping him from stopping and getting lunch on the way home or egg rolls at the gas station or whatever it is. That was keeping him on track as well by both of us being in tune with this. If one of you is and the other isn't, that's like swimming upstream all the time, and we did not want that. The next item is stop paying attention to how much is in your account. And now hear me out on this. So sometimes I got used to feeling like, oh, we just got paid. We have extra money. That means we can do extra things. And we had to shift our thinking with that. Instead, say no. We already know where all this money is going. It doesn't matter if it's today or 5 days from now or 10 days from now. We already know where it's going, so we just have to trust that process. It may seem like there's a lot in there, but that's because in 7 days, we're paying this bill. And so we had to stick to what the budget was we already made and quit paying attention to the ebb and flow. Making sure, of course, that we had enough money. I'm not saying ignore it when it's low, but when it seems like there's extra, as long as you're on track and you're tracking what you have and you know the plan, then you have to train yourself not to be reactive to that. So we went all cash while we were getting out of debt. Now, granted, this was a decade ago. We cut off all the credit cards. We cut off everything because we knew our behaviors were out of control. Now, about 5 years ago, we started getting credit cards again. But we did it very strategically, and we did it for the bonuses. I swear by that now, but it's only because we can handle it. because we had to completely brainwash ourselves and retrain ourselves how to handle credit cards, and they are paid in full. So we get these bonuses and we use them for traveling. But if we weren't paying them in full, they would be worthless, because that interest we'd be paying, I feel like we'd be letting the credit card companies still win. And so we are not going out and spending extra. We still stick to a budget. We aren't just shopping because we have available credit. We pay everything off, but then we have the bonuses. And because of those bonuses, we've saved thousands of dollars on these big trips that we've done. And in fact, I think we had dozens. I don't remember the exact number of free nights when we did our 3-month around the world trip a few years ago. And that's real savings. And so if you get out of debt and you can be really strategic about it, or shift the things that you're already spending on through the credit cards, you can get points and use them strategically. But do not do that if you're having a problem paying it off. If you are still in payoff mode and you can't control it, then that's not the way to go. So save that for later. And lastly, I just wanted to share this. This was not part of our getting out of debt story, but this is more of a recent thing, that we had money sitting in our account, in a savings account. We had about $15,000 sitting in our account. We knew that we were going to start traveling in August of 2026. So about a year ago in March, we took that money. We left a few thousand in our savings account, but we took it and we put it in a couple different certificate of deposits, where we would earn, at the time, one was earning like 5%, another 4.5% or something like that. Not a ton, but we knew we didn't want to invest it in case the stock market was up or down when we needed the money. But we knew if we could have a guaranteed 4 to 5% on that money, that would at least be a few $100s extra. And so that's what we did. So once we had the money sitting there, instead of just leaving all that money in a savings account, we kind of staggered some certificate of deposits. So there's different ways you can do that, but for us that worked out really well. And then like one just became available again, like it matured. I was able to then take that money and pop it into a different account that we are going to be using. And then in a couple months when the next one does, I can decide to either roll it over again or invest it or decide where that money goes at that point. But we'll have gained a few $100s on that, few $1,000. So down the road, just know that there are other things you can start doing later to have your money, when you're not paying interest to someone, suddenly you're making interest on that money. And that's really empowering feeling to be in. All of this hard work and this discipline that you're building, there will be a light at the end of the tunnel and you will get there. And then you'll get to start making like all that extra money you've been putting towards debt. Suddenly you can start putting that in the savings account. Even if you dial back your extremeness a little bit, you can still have extra money then that you're putting away. And then you have choices with that money. So be encouraged. All of this hard work is not for nothing. It can be life-changing. I promise you, paying that $48,000 off changed our lives. It changed who we are. It changed our confidence. It changed that we feel empowered to control our future instead of just victims and vulnerable to just the ways of everything. We know that we can do hard things, and that's really important. If there's anything else you would add to this, I would love to hear. If you are working on getting out of debt, feel free to share with us. Where are you at? It's such a vulnerable, exhausting, scary time. And I've lived it. I know it. I have such a respect for anyone who's going through that. And I will cheer you on if you want to share where you're at. So thanks so much for being here. Stay tuned for the next video where I'm going to be talking about lifestyle choices we made and to save money and just help us put more money towards that debt payoff. All right. Have a great day. Bye.